Hey, hello, welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, and this week we're definitely going to spend a little bit of time here talking about Kevin Durant, who, in a strange way, a guy who was already a Hall of Famer, who already has an MVP award, plays in New York for a team in first place, is somehow getting overlooked, I think, a little bit in the MVP race. So, Bontemps, you did your first edition of your straw poll that came out recently, and
That's
Durant
correct.
got 2 votes, 2 first place votes out of 100, even though he is having an incredible season, lead the league in scoring at almost 30 points a game, carrying his team without Kyrie Irving, and playing just some incredible two-way basketball, all things considered. And, you know, his agent, Rich Kleiman, the other night, he played a great game. I think you were at in Brooklyn, Bontemps, where
I was.
They won in overtime, right?
Wild game. Only 8 players, played with 4 rookies at one point in the game. Started David Duke Jr., a two-way guy from Providence College that probably no one watching the game had ever heard of before, who actually played really well at 13 rebounds. But yeah, KD had a casual 34-point triple-double in an overtime win. Played 48 minutes. It was quite good.
Right. He's playing crazy number of minutes. And so that was the same night that Curry broke the 3-point record at MSG across town.
Yep.
And his agent, Durant's agent, Rich Kleiman, tweeted, I know I'm biased, but you see what KD is doing. It may look easy, but it isn't. Consistency, efficiency, execution, and the best in the world. And the Nets win with 8 guys, and KD plays the way he did, and all New York radio was talking about is Steph. And I love Steph. I was just like, this was an amazing moment to me because Rich has a point. KD should be getting more attention, but KD chose Brooklyn. And it wasn't like when he chose Brooklyn, he didn't know that it was going to be less attention in New York.
A lot cooler, though. A lot cooler than the Knicks.
I know that was what Durant said, and it was a blow for the Nets fan base against the Knicks. But like, is KD paying a penalty here,
dude,
for being
first of all,
a Net and not a Knick?
Hey, McMahon, I know you sometimes struggle with math, but do you remember last week where Kevin Durant sat in the MVP straw poll?
2.
He was a clear second place in the MVP straw poll. He was only behind his former teammate, Steph Curry, who, by the way, on Tuesday, the same night I was at what was a very fun and entertaining and wild Nets-Raptors game, and Kevin was phenomenal. Steph Curry only set that night the all-time three-point shooting record in the NBA at Madison Square Garden. So, yes, I don't think it's a surprise that people were focused on that game. Now, also,
okay, go on.
No, the only other thing I was going to say was, now also, Kevin has been phenomenal this season, and I thought was a deserving second place in the ballot. Yes. I believe I had him in second in my personal ballot. If you're going to talk about somebody who's being overlooked in the MVP race, in my opinion, you need to look at the guy who won the MVP award last year, who, by the way, has a PER of 35 this season and is averaging, I'm going to look it up right now, I got it right here, 26 points, 13 and a half rebounds, and 7.5 assists, playing without his number 2 guy and his number 3 guy, who are both maybe out for the season with injuries, and is carrying a Denver Nuggets team that's had, PJ Dozier has also been hurt. Jamal Murray is one of those guys who has played. Michael Porter Jr. has a back issue. So Nikola Jokic has been way better than last year. He's carrying his team to ridiculous levels, is doing stuff literally no one's ever done before, and he's not even being talked about. So yeah, look, KD has been awesome.
We are not talking about Jokic being overlooked. We're talking about Durant.
Well, I understand that. My point is that I don't think you can say, I don't think you could say Kevin Durant's being overlooked when he's a clear second in the balloting to a guy who right now is on pace to shatter his own NBA 3-point shooting record and just broke the all-time 3-point shooting record in Steph Curry. And look, the bottom line is, to your point, he is playing for the Nets, and the Nets are not the Knicks. If he was playing for the Knicks, things would be a lot different.
He'd still be second in the MVP voting. Well, let's not make this Nets, Knicks, all that crap. Listen.
No, I was only saying in terms of attention in New York City. It doesn't make him overlooked in the MVP race. Like, yeah, right. That part is true, but he would still be second to Steph Curry.
I'm not going to sit here and apologize for Steph Curry being the clear front runner in the PMVP straw poll, premature MVP straw poll. We're not going to apologize for that. Steph Curry is playing for the team that has the best record and is by far the biggest reason they have the best record. He leads the league in plus minus by like 80 points. No, he's almost twice as his plus minus is almost twice as good as anybody else on his own team. Okay. Kevin Durant has been absolutely phenomenal. He is certainly in the early MVP conversation. If you ask anybody who knows a damn thing about basketball, who's the best basketball player in the world, he's going to be, if not the first name to come up in the conversation, second, third at the latest. Like, overlooked my arse. Listen, Kevin Durant is so damn historically elite at basketball that as on the wrong side of 30 with a ruptured Achilles that you knew was probably going to sideline him for an entire season, every team in the league would have loved to max him out. The Nets were widely praised for maxing him out when he was going to miss the entire next season with an injury that has ruined a lot of careers. And by the way, it was maxing more because they had to max him out and then give the friend $40 million contract to DeAndre Jordan. And everybody was like, great move.
He'll never not mention that, Bontemps.
It's true. I know.
Not only
DeAndre Jordan, who played 8 minutes last night for the Lakers when Dwight Howard has COVID. The only other center on the roster had COVID.
That's right. Not only did they do that, they signed Kyrie Irving too on top of it. So look, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I don't buy this idea that Kevin Durant is being overlooked in
There's
Brooklyn.
no question he's being overlooked. There's no question.
By who?
Well, wait a second. No, wait a second. When you say he's being overlooked, okay, define what overlooked means.
I mean that
to you,
he and the Nets are not receiving the credit for the fact that they are in first place and he is playing.
Oh wait a second.
44 minutes a night.
Who is not
they're
giving them
concern about that?
There is a lot of concern about that. I asked Kevin about that after the game on Tuesday, and he, to his credit, Kevin always wants to play, and he basically said, "I'm going to do whatever I got to do to win, man. Like, they want me to play, I'm going to play." That's always going to be his answer. But I do think it's a concern that he's playing 48 minutes in a meaningless game in December against the Toronto Raptors, and he's averaging more minutes than he's played in any game since he won his MVP award 8 years ago. But to go back to my question, when you say Kevin Durant is being overlooked, what do you mean?
I think this should be more of a toss-up MVP race than landslide for Steph. And I am now regretting that I voted for Steph.
Okay, so what you're saying?
And Durant too. I'm regretting it. I'm reconsidering it already.
Oh yeah, but the only reason you are is because it was so lopsided.
That's right.
And so who gives a crap? Steph Curry was the clear-cut MVP frontrunner at this early juncture of the season. That's not disrespectful.
That's what the vote said. It was clear cut.
That's not disrespectful to Kevin Durant.
Nobody's
taking anything away from KD.
Look, I think for as good as Kevin Durant has been, you can argue that Giannis should be ahead of him based off the fact that the Bucks have had a billion injuries and they have basically the same record after falling into a huge hole. And Giannis has been fantastic for them. Now, obviously, he's unfortunately in the COVID protocols for a while. But he's been a big part of them climbing way back up the standings and making up a big gap on the Nets. And Jokic, as I said before, has been phenomenal for Denver and has kept them afloat despite the fact that they've had a ton of injuries on their team. And at the end of the day, Steph isn't first because the Warriors, as we talked about on the pod last week, a couple months ago, people weren't sure if Golden State would be out of the play-in tournament. And they have the best record in the NBA. They have the best net rating in the NBA. And Steph is on pace to shatter his own three-point shooting record for a season with like 433 pointers in a season, which is completely bonkers. So that's why he is in first place. And the fact that Kevin Durant is a clear second place, this goes back to the arguments you were making last year about Joel Embiid. It is not an insult that someone is second. Someone has to be second. If Steph Curry was second and Kevin Durant was first, I'd say, okay, Kevin Durant's been unbelievable and Steph's been unbelievable. Like this isn't an overlooked underlooked thing.
I can't believe that this keeps happening. That's not what my argument was about Embiid. I was saying that you shouldn't be disqualified because you missed a couple of games.
I was just winding you up, buddy.
And on
this one, I am genuinely confused though as to why he's being overlooked, because you're saying the fact that he wasn't in first place or the fact that he didn't get more first place votes means he's being overlooked.
I couldn't believe how big of a landslide of a lead Curry had. It's so big that I don't think, short of injury, short of whatever magic number that there is where you go, oh, now the guy's not an MVP. He was an MVP if he missed X number of games, but not if he misses X+1. But I don't think there's any way Steph can lose it unless he gets hurt. And I'm just like, I'm very surprised.
Well,
I'm part of the problem. I realize I didn't give enough perspective to it. I'm admitting I'm part of the problem.
I mean, this is I love when you have these discussions with yourself. It is very amusing. As we said on the pod last week, I think that if the Warriors are not on pace to win 65 games in a couple of months, the voting could look a lot different.
And I would say to you that the Nets, considering the whole Kyrie thing and considering other guys are hurt and that they've got this old roster, if Durant gets the Knicks or the Nets to 57 wins or whatever they're on pace for, it'd be like getting the Warriors to 65.
And I would say to you, let's let the next 2/3 of the season play out before we start crying about the MVP.
I would say that. And I would also say that if you look at the Nets season, they have lost every game to the good teams. I think they're 0-6 against Milwaukee, Chicago, Miami, Phoenix, and Golden State. And I believe 4 of those games have been at home. So, look, they have beaten up on all the bad teams. And I want to say they're like something like 18-2 or 20-2 against everybody else. That's because KD basically is a walking 30 points a night at ridiculous efficiency. So he has done a great job of carrying them when McMahon's old pal James Harden has not played to the same level that he has prior. So, he has been unbelievably good, but I would push back on the idea that he's being overlooked because he was a very clear second place ahead of guys like Giannis and Jokic and Chris Paul, who've all been awesome in their own right. So that's all. I think somebody had to finish second. It's okay. It's okay to finish second. It's not the end of the world.
He was a very
first loser.
He was a very clear second place. That's true. He was very clearly in second. All right. We talk about this and a lot more on the Hoop Collective podcast, which comes out every Tuesday and Friday. Listen to us there. Thanks for watching.
Adios, amigos.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.